Okay, welcome to our inaugural video blog. I'm Peter Kissel, a sports chiropractor, proactive athlete. Today we got John Blair, who's a strength and conditioning coach with sports-specific training. We're sitting inside SST, and we're going to talk about one particular injury. So this is going to be part one of a two-part video blog. One of the most common injuries that people tend to come in to see us at our clinic with are hamstring strains and then chronic recurrent hamstring strains. So that means somebody that's hurt their hamstring once and then hurts it over and over again. And I'm sure a lot of the athletes here get that as well, eh, John? Yeah. The primary sports that these tend to occur in are sports with sprinting, things like football and usually soccer. And in fact, almost all the research on this protocol is to do with soccer. In soccer, it's the most common injury, period. So injuries to the hamstring account for 12 to 16% of all soccer injuries. And the most problematic thing is the recurrence. So the recurrence rate is so high. If you tweak or strain your hamstring, within 2 months of going back to play, there's a 22% chance that you're going to re-aggravate the same injury. And there's a very popular Danish study that showed on professional soccer players, if they had a hamstring injury 1 year, there was a 1 in 4 chance, 25%, that they were going to re-aggravate that same injury the following competitive season. So despite the fact that it's a full year later. So big, big problem. Your hamstring is actually a group of a number of muscles. You have 2 muscles on the inside called your semimembranosus and your semitendinosus, and then 2 on the outside called your long and short head of your biceps femoris. You also have a 5th contributor here called the hamstring portion of your adductor magnus. Now, the hamstring is one of these weird joints that are weird muscles that actually crosses 2 joints. So it means it has 2 responsibilities. The first one, because it crosses your hip joint, is for pelvic or hip extension. So that's when Johnny leans back this way or lifts his leg straight back off the ground. So just go into hip extension. The second, and obviously its predominant use, is that of knee flexion. So as Johnny starts to flex his knee, you see these 2 sort of strings on the outside. Those are the actual tendons of his hamstring muscle, and you can see it bulk up there. Now, muscles tend to aggravate or injure themselves, you can turn around, during what's called the eccentric phase. That's when they're most active. So when the muscle's actually contracting while it's lengthening. In sprinting, that occurs at what's called the end of swing phase. So as I'm extending forward, most hamstring injuries actually occur right before my leg actually touches the ground. The reason for that is your hamstring has to contract eccentrically to control your knee extension as it's coming through. You're forcing through as quick as you can and extending down. Your hamstring's actually what's controlling your knee from extending too far, and then it goes into a concentric contraction to start flexing your knee before you hit the ground. So the majority of hamstring injuries actually occur at the end phase, despite the fact anecdotally people say, oh, I pulled it when I pushed off. It's been shown the majority actually happen at that juncture, and usually to one specific muscle called the long head of your biceps femoris, outside muscle that we talked about at the beginning. So, if we know that it's eccentrically or when the muscle's lengthening, the most intuitive thing is why don't we So in 2001, a guy named Brockett first described an eccentric hamstring protocol to help train the muscle to get stronger during that phase of contraction. And from that, it was built on, and now it's called the Nordic Hamstring Exercise. Just recently, in November 2011, there was a very high-quality study that came out in the American Journal of Sports Medicine by a guy named Peterson that looked at previous studies and sort of picked apart why there's conflicting results for it. I really like this study, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but first let's just get right to the exercise. The most important thing with any exercise, and I'm sure Johnny can attest to this, is exercise progression. So the reason I like this study the best is it started with the individuals going through the exercise just once per week for 2 sets of 5 repetitions. By week 5, they were up to 3 times per week of 3 sets, with each set being 12 repetitions, 10 set repetitions, and then 8 repetitions. So it showed really good progression. They had to actually go through that for 10 weeks total. So Johnny, we're going to go through the exercise here. Johnny's going to be on his knees. It's a partner-based exercise. I'm going to hold on to his actual ankles so that he doesn't lean forward. We're only going to work the hamstring eccentrically. That's a key component to this actual exercise. So Johnny's going to have his hands up. I'm going to hold him down here, and as slow as he possibly can, he's going to try to lower himself towards the ground, hanging on to his hamstrings. He can go a bit quicker. At some point, he's going to give way. Now, the important part is once he hits his chest off the ground, then he pushes up, and keep going, he pushes up as quickly as he can. What that's doing is it's taking away the concentric portion of the hamstring, so he's not using his hamstrings to get back up. So with this, we're just training it eccentrically. Hold it a bit longer, as long as you can. There you go, that's better. Good, you can relax. So that's the basis of the eccentric protocol. So this is essentially a single person variation of the same exercise protocol we did. Sometimes it's not always going to require a second person, or you might have a constraint where you can't find a second person to do the protocol with. So Johnny's going to use an exercise machine called a glute ham raise, and he's going to show us how you can do this exercise with just one person. So he's slowly going to come down, keeping his legs locked underneath, control it eccentrically the entire time. Once he gets to roughly even, he's just going to push himself back up without utilizing his hamstrings concentrically to begin back to the starting position. At this point, he's going to repeat the exercise, come down nice and slow, grab himself at roughly parallel to the ground, push his bum back, and then walk himself up with his hands. So Johnny, this time, just try not to even do the concentric part at the top. Just walk yourself up with your hands. Okay. Do the same thing again. He's going to come down nice and slow. At roughly even, he's going to catch himself, now walk himself back up, utilizing the actual machinery. You can do the same thing by having yourself down underneath a pull down machine, just anything that's going to be able to actually trap your legs underneath you and support you as you slowly lower yourself. Now we talked about the progression through the exercises. I bet you're wondering what the study outcome was. So with this study, it was on 5 levels of Danish soccer players, all the way from professional down to amateurs. They had 23 teams go through that intervention like we just showed with the progression that I stated, and 27 control teams, so teams that didn't do that exercise at all. Overall, the results found that just using the Nordic Hamstring protocol, they reduced hamstring injury frequency by 60%, and more importantly, they reduced re-aggravation, so recurrent hamstring injuries in people that had previously had them, by a full 85%. Now, like any study, there were some methodological concerns and a couple of deficiencies that they self-noted, but overall it was a very high-quality study, one that we can put quite a bit of onus on. And for the athletes that come through our clinic and the ones that come through sport-specific training as well, we put them on an eccentric protocol. If they're soccer players or football players in sprinting positions like wide receivers and things, and it tends to have a very, very good output. So stay tuned for part 2 of our blog post on the progressive agility and trunk stabilization program next week, with one particular article by authors named Sherry and Best.